Welcome to another of our virtual tours we're running here at Incredible Indian Tours. Glad that you could join us today. Today we are taking you to one of my favorite countries in the world, Nepal. It's a lot more than just mountains. There is so much to see and do here. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what we do. Now, we run a couple of tours in Nepal, like we do in Gujarat in our last webinar. So I'm not taking you through an actual tour. I'm just touching on all the different places that we visit and give you an idea of what makes Nepal so truly incredible. So starting, the country itself is very small. It's only got about 29 million people in a small area, 147,000 kilometers, which is similar in size to the state of Iowa or Illinois, and about double the size of the state of Tasmania in Australia. It's landlocked, it's sandwiched in between China and India. And just move my image there, and you can see the flag there is actually the only non-rectangular flag in the world. Little interesting fact for you. Capital is Kathmandu, and the other main city that you may have heard of or you will visit if you go to Nepal is Pokhara, which is the adventure capital of Nepal. What makes Nepal so very interesting is that it varies in height from the lowest point, 59 meters above sea level, up to the highest point on the face of the earth, Mount Everest, at 8,848 meters. In feet, that's approximately 200 foot to just over 29,000 feet. So the topography of Nepal is in such a short space, within about 150 to 200 kilometers, you're going from almost sea level to the highest place on earth. So the land varies so very much, and it gives you so much for the diversity of flora, of fauna, of everything. It's just an amazing country, the nature of it, the rivers, the hills, the agriculture, everything changes so much in such a short space of time, which makes it very interesting to visit. So today I'm going to show you through various aspects. We'll start in the Kathmandu Valley, which has lots to do and see. Take you over to Pokhara. I'll take you down to the lowlands, the Terai, to some of the mid-range hills, and tell you a little bit about the mountains, of course, the famous Himalayas. I'll talk a little bit about the trekking and other adventures in Nepal. And I'm also going to spend a little bit of time telling you about the Upper Mustang region, which is a fascinating part of Nepal that we do visit on one of our tours. And I'm also, of course, going to tell you more about the food, the fabulous cuisine in Nepal, its people and culture. So to get started, we are going to have a look at the Kathmandu Valley, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Area. There are actually 7 UNESCO sites within the valley. 3 of them are the ancient cities. There are 2 Buddhist sites and 2 Hindu sites. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the shopping and the wonderful arts and crafts available in Nepal, and take you to Pokhara as well. So here's your map of Nepal, and you can see Kathmandu is just in the central eastern part. Pokhara is only 200 kilometers to the west. They're quite close together. It does take about a 7-hour period to drive between the two, or roughly 40-minute flight. So in Kathmandu, we are visiting Durbar Square. Now, Durbar literally means palace. So this is the place that you'll come to see the old palaces and temples that were built by the kings. Now, the 3 cities of the Kathmandu Valley all had their own Durbar Squares. So there's a lot of amazing Nawari architecture to see here. It was damaged a lot during the earthquake in 2015, but what you're seeing here, these pictures is post-earthquake, so there's still a lot of very well maintained buildings that you can see, and they are starting to restore some of the other places as well. This area of Kathmandu dates back to the 3rd century, although the architecture that you see is from the 16th century. There's a bustling part of town. This picture on the right, top right, is just leading down into the Durbar Square. So temples, ancient temples dotted everywhere, modern buildings around them, busy, crowded markets, lots of shopping, tourist knickknacks all around. It's a fabulous place to explore. Then I'm moving on to Bhaktapur, the second of the 3 ancient cities of the Kathmandu Valley. And Bhaktapur dates from the 12th century. It's about 14 kilometres only to the east of Kathmandu, and this dates from the 17th century. It's a wonderful old town to explore. One of the famous parts of Bhaktapur is their Potter's Square. I'll show you a bit more of that later. The third of the great cities in the Kathmandu Valley is Patan. Patan also dates from the 3rd century. It's about 8 kilometres to the south of Kathmandu. So they're all in a very small area. As you can see, the current architecture of Patan dates back to the 17th century, and very beautiful, as you can see. Now, this is the first of the Buddhist sites I am going to talk about. This is a place called Bodhnath. Bodhnath is the largest Buddhist stupa in Nepal. It's again just to the east of Kathmandu. It's just north of the airport. When you fly into Kathmandu, you often see this huge dome just popping out of the middle of Kathmandu city. And everywhere you go, when you're in the square, the Bodhnath Square, you see the amazing eyes looking down on you. It's where the Buddhists come to do the Kora. The Kora is the circumambulation of the stupa. So there's a walkway all around, surrounded by monasteries, shops, cafes, lots of restaurants, and great to come here and soak up the atmosphere of this beautiful and very old site. Now I am in a place called Swayambhunath. Swayambhunath is situated on a hill to the west of Kathmandu city. This is all still in the valley. And Swayambhunath is very old. It dates back to the 5th century. Again, you have a stupa on the top, surrounded by lots of monasteries and shops, temples. And again, Buddhists come and they do the Kora, the circumambulation, spinning the prayer wheels as they go. Swayambhunath is also known as the monkey temple because there are hundreds of monkeys up there when you go and visit. So leaving behind the Buddhist sites, now we are going to visit a couple of very important Hindu sites in the Kathmandu Valley. The first one is Pashupatinath. This is a very ancient site. It is one of the most important Shiva temples in all of the subcontinent. It's also the site of the cremation ghats, the burning ghats. So when you come here, there's a small river, the Bagmati River, and you will see burning. You can see the image there on the right of a Hindu priest. In the background across the river is a cremation happening, which is, it's very interesting to see. It can be quite confronting, but it is life and death as it is taken here in Kathmandu, in India as well, a Hindu belief that this is the way they celebrate people's life. And of course, it's a very sad occasion when they lose someone, but to come and publicly mark the end by cremating the body is a very moving experience, and certainly very interesting to see. You also see these sadhus when you come to Pashupatinath, very colourfully dressed and decorated, and great to get some photos of them and meet them and even get a blessing if you're lucky. The last of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites and the Hindu sites in the Kathmandu Valley that we're visiting is Chengu, which is very ancient. This dates back to probably the 4th century, and it's out of the Kathmandu area a little. It's at the northeastern edge of the valley before you start going up into the hills, and it's a very beautiful place to come, very ancient temples. A lot of fun coming here too. There's a beautiful pathway that you walk up through the village. There's a few shops and cafes around to visit. So we visit all of these places when we are in Kathmandu in our tours, so you get to see all of this. Now, when you're also in Kathmandu, you might not be aware that you're very close to the mountains, and they're often not visible from the Kathmandu Valley itself because of pollution. Now, when you are in Kathmandu, I highly recommend taking a couple of extra days and taking a night or two to go up to the eastern valley rim. There's a couple of destinations. You can either go to a place called Nagakot, which is a very famous hilltop viewing point, or Dulikil is the second place. And you can spend the night, and when you get up early in the morning, you get amazing Himalayan mountain views like these. It's really quite spectacular. If you're lucky, the daytime will remain clear, and you get to see mountain range for many, literally hundreds of kilometers. Sunrise is beautiful up there. Often you have the clouds and the mist down in the valley below. So I highly recommend doing that when you come to Nepal. Now, before we leave the valley, I'm going to take you back to Kathmandu and to Tamil, which is where you'll probably stay if you come on a trip with us. Most of the guest houses and hotels are located in the Tamil or nearby the Tamil area. And this is vibrant happening. It's all about tourism and shops and trekking stores. There's lots to see and do here, some fantastic restaurants and cafes. So this leads me into some of the shopping in Kathmandu. And firstly, you'll find lots of shops selling trekking and outdoor adventure gear. Now, there are a few of the genuine outlets here. You can find North Face, you can find Black Yak and various others. Most of the goods are actually fakes, but they're good quality, and they're certainly good enough for a few weeks if you're going trekking or doing anything else in Nepal. You'll also find shops selling everything you can imagine: pottery, tankers, the beautiful Tibetan pictures that I'll show you in the next slide, woven goods, woolen goods, metal goods, wooden carvings, clothes, and of course, lots of jewelry. So you'll sometimes see women, and this is not just in Kathmandu, this is throughout all of Nepal. You'll see women sitting outside their homes weaving, or in the entranceway to their homes, and they might have a little shop where they're selling the goods that they make. Various places you can go and see the people painting these tankers that of course you can also buy, which is lovely to see. This is the pottery square back in Bhaktapur, and surrounding the square, this is where they make the pots, and they lay them all out in the sun to dry before they actually fire them in the kiln. And surrounding the square are some shops where you can buy lots of different varieties of pottery. Also, just walking around Kathmandu and Bhaktapur is a wonderful destination for shopping as well. There's fantastic old buildings. You can see the building here on the left with the wooden windows above, selling all sorts of exciting, colourful goods. So shopping in Nepal is amazing, and make sure that you leave room in your bag or bring a spare one because you're going to be taking lots of things home with you. So now we're going to be moving on to Pokhara. As I said, 200 kilometers away from Kathmandu. And Pokhara is a beautiful place nestled in between the mountains, the Annapurna Range and gorgeous Lake Buah. It's really close to the mountains. This picture on the left here is actually taken from Kathmandu Airport, and you can see one of the famous mountains of the Annapurna Range, Fishtail, there, just poking out from behind the mist in an early morning. You get some amazing sunrises from hilltops around there. So it's a very beautiful place to come. It is the adventure capital, so I'm going to be telling you more about that a little later. But now we're going to be moving down to the lowlands of Nepal. The area is known as the Terai. And I'm going to talk to you about the wildlife there and also about the most famous site to visit, which is Lumbini. Now, this is the Terai. So this is a map of Nepal. This green area at the bottom, that is the Terai. It makes up 17% of Nepal. So I'm going to talk about Lumbini, which is down here right near the Indian border. I'm also going to talk about Chitwan National Park, which is in this area south of Kathmandu, and Bardia National Park, which is right over in the west here in this area. So first I will take you to Lumbini. Lumbini was where the Buddha was born in 623 BC. This white building on the left with the monks walking by in front of is believed to be a temple built over the place the Buddha was actually born. And a lot of the Buddhist nations around the world have built temples and stupas in the area. It's a beautiful place to visit, one of the most important pilgrimage sites for Buddhists to come in India and Nepal, or sites that are associated with Buddha's life. Now, the wildlife of the Terai is what most people come to see, and there are a number of wildlife parks, but I'm only going to be telling you about Chitwan and Bardia today. And those are the places where you are very likely to be able to see at least two of the big three, the rhinos and the elephants, wild in these parks. And if you're lucky, you can see tigers. You have a very good chance of seeing tigers when you are in Bardia. So if you want to see a tiger in Nepal, I'd recommend going out there. It's a long way to travel. You're best to take a flight and then there's a road trip from there. But if you're very lucky and you come to Chitwan, you might see a tiger. When I say very lucky, I mean very lucky. In 20 years, I've been visiting Chitwan, doing numerous safaris. I've only ever seen a tiger once. So of course, the people that were with me that trip, it was their first visit and they got to see a tiger on their first trip. So it's purely luck of the draw, as it is with wildlife sightings anywhere. But it's a very exciting thing to see. And they're beautiful parks, and there's lots of other things to see in addition to lots of deer and monkeys, of course. There's a lot of crocodiles. You might get to see a bear, and the bird life in these parks in Nepal in general is amazing. In Chitwan alone, there are 550 different species of birds. So if you are a bird watcher, then it's a wonderful place to come. Visiting the parks is a lot of fun. In Chitwan, we always take a trip down the river, the Rapti River, in these dugout canoes. And we take jeep safaris through the park as well. Now, when you're in the Terai, you're also going to have a chance to visit some of the villages there. The people that live in this area are known as the Tarus. So these are Taru villages. And in Chitwan, they've become a little bit more touristy over the years. But if you do get over to Bardia, the villages there are very traditional, remain so. And they have these wonderful mud thatched houses. They're very traditional agriculture and fishing. You can see the picture on the right there. The man is casting a fishing net in a pond. You'll get to visit inside the houses, which are still very traditionally decorated. So it's a wonderful part of Nepal to explore, and it's got nothing to do with mountains. Now, moving on, we are heading into the Midland villages, and I'm going to talk about a couple of villages today that we do visit on our incredible Nepal tour, Nuakot and Bandipur. Now, to show you where they are, the mid-range hills is this whole middle section of Nepal. And Nuakot is just outside of the Kathmandu Valley. So this is the Kathmandu Valley. Nuakot is just to the northwest of it. And Bandipur is halfway between Kathmandu and Pokhara, just off above the river here to the south. So first we'll go to Nuakot, which is situated just on the entrance to one of the entrances to the Kathmandu Valley. It was on the Tibet-India trade route and was considered a very important and strategic location. So it had its own Durbar Square, and you can see these buildings here. Again, as I said, Durbar meaning palace. Quite badly damaged during the earthquake. There is some reconstruction work going on, but it's got a long way to go. But it's still a very beautiful place to visit and nestled just, as you can see, south of one of the mountain ranges there. People in Nuakot are very friendly. It's a very small town. Lots of great walks around the area. We stay in an old farmhouse that has been wonderfully refurbished and restored and turned into a lodge. It's called the Famous Farm. And it's absolutely glorious. We spent a couple of nights there. Now we're in Bandipur. And Bandipur, like Nuakot, was on the Tibet-India trade route. Again, very important strategic location. It prospered greatly up in the early 19th century until the road was built below in the 1970s, when it suddenly lost all its importance. What happened is it just became this town lost in time, and it totally retained its Nawari architecture and feel. It's situated on this ridge with views north to the Himalayan range. You can see the image on the bottom right there. Views that you get from Bandipur, and the main walk pathway of the town is vehicle free, so it's a wonderful place to explore and spend time. The village itself is very charming. Again, we stay in a really beautifully refurbished old mansion. It's called the Old Inn of Bandipur, and another charming place to spend a couple of days. So now we're going to move on to the mountains, which, of course, as I showed you again on this map, are the northernmost part of Nepal. The White Peaks you can see on this, and it takes up around 15% of Nepal's landmass. Here are a few of the major peaks from east to west. You can see Kanchenjunga, Everest, of course, Annapurna and Dholagiri are some of the other well-known mountain ranges of Nepal. Now, to give you a bit of information about Nepal's mountains, they are the Himalayas. It's not the Himalaya range, though. There are around 24,000 kilometers of the Himalayas broken up into many different ranges. In Nepal alone, there are 19 different mountain ranges, including the Annapurna range, the Dholagiri range, the Kanchenjunga range, the Everest range. So these are some of the ranges that you're looking at here. The top left is the Annapurna range. The bottom left is the Kanchenjunga range. This photo is actually taken from Darjeeling in India, which is a very good place to see it from. And on the right is part of the Everest range. So there are also a lot of very famous peaks, and the peak on the left is called Fishtail Mountain, or in the Nepali language, Machaputre. It's the mountain that, coming back here, you can see here in Pokhara, the beautiful pointed mountain there. So you come around the side of it and you get to actually see why it's called Fishtail. The mountain on the right here is Amadablam, which is in the Everest region. If you go trekking in the Everest part of Nepal, you will see that mountain. And of course, down the bottom here is Mount Everest. And to the right of it is a mountain called Lhotse, which is the third highest mountain in Nepal. Number 1 is Everest, number 2 is Kanchenjunga, number 3 is Lhotse. The second highest mountain in the world is actually K2, which is in Pakistan. But the top 3 in Nepal are those. So moving away from the mountains now, I'm going to talk a little bit about trekking and other adventures that are available when you come to Nepal. And it's not all a lot of hard work. We, on our tours, do some optional walking, and we do some whitewater rafting. There's lots of other things that you can do if you're game to do a paraglide or take a mountain flight or something like that. There are those options as well. So trekking in Nepal, you get to go to some absolutely remarkable parts of the country. It's where you really get to see the real people of Nepal that are still living in their villages, in their towns, and you get to walk across these great suspension bridges and see the most amazing mountain views when you go trekking. These days you can go camping when you're trekking, but more often than not, people stay in tea houses that have been set up in the villages along the way. And some of them are very comfortable. There's one of my favorite tea houses in Kagbeni. On the top right here, it's actually called Yak Donald's, after the yak, the famed mountain bovine of Nepal, and beautiful villages, very friendly and charming. So trekking is a lot of fun, but you can also go whitewater rafting. There are many different rivers that you can raft on in Nepal. Some trips are only a half day long, like the one that we do, and you can go for a week or even more on rafting adventures. There's lots of other adventures. As I mentioned, there's paragliding. Pokhara is the main area that you would go paragliding, and in fact, for most of the adventures, you can do ultralight flights out of Pokhara. There's a zip line. It's the longest and highest zip line in the world. And there's also joy flights, mountain biking, bungee jumping, skydiving, to name a few other adventures in Nepal. One of my favorite things to do, though, is a mountain flight. And if you come with us, we go on a mountain flight up into the Mustang region to Jomsom, and you get to see some amazing views. Or you can take a joy flight out of Kathmandu, where you get to fly up close to Everest. And that is a very cool thing to do. Now, I am leaving behind the rest of Nepal to concentrate on this amazing part of the country called Upper Mustang. We have an entire trip that concentrates on Upper Mustang because it is so remarkable and mind-blowingly beautiful. So the history of Upper Mustang and Lomanthang, the capital, is very interesting. This is the province of Mustang, and up until 1950, it was actually a separate kingdom, and it was only made part of Nepal after that time. It also was closed to foreigners until 1992, so it has retained a lot of its unique Tibetan culture. This is Lomanthang, and it was founded in 1380. It's a very small town. The whole town is surrounded by a 6-meter high earthen wall. There are only 200 households in Lomanthang with around 800 to 900 residents. Many of these residents actually head to lower lands for the winter because it is so harsh up there. You're situated at just under 4,000 meters. Now, ethnically, the people here in Upper Mustang are Western and Central Tibetan. They only receive around 3,000 to 4,000 tourists in the entire area every year. mainly because it's quite hard to get to, and there is a $500 US dollar permit to enter the area, which gives you 10 days to stay there. So in 10 days, you can do a decent trek through into Lomanthang and back, or you can actually now do the entire area by jeep. There have been roads built in. Unfortunately, there are roads going all the way up to the Tibetan border, which is only 20 kilometers to the north of Lomanthang. It means eventually there will be a lot more traffic coming through and the Mustang area will change forever, but it's still possible to see Mustang as it always has been. So now is the time to go rather than in 5 or more years from now. So you can trek through the area, and there's lots of sidewalks that you can do that take you to some remarkable places. It's quite not one of the hardest treks in Nepal, but it is challenging. You go over several passes around about 4,000 meters high. So that's quite high. That's around about 16,000 feet, I believe. Probably not that much, 12,000, 13,000 feet. You stay in some of the lovely old villages, but you can also do the whole trip, as I said, by 4-wheel drive, which is what our Upper Mustang trip does. There's optional walks that you can do, but we do all the hard work in good vehicles on roads. So a lot of the roads they're dirt roads, but they're pretty good condition. There are a few that are a little bit rough, and some of it you'll also be actually driving along the riverbank. This is the Kaligandaki Gorge, which cuts its way all the way through Upper Mustang and runs down right through Nepal to the Indian border and beyond, joins the Ganges eventually. So Upper Mustang is an area I highly recommend to everyone to come and see. It is so incredible. I just got lots of images here to show you of what you'll see when you're up there, the different vistas. You're actually behind the Annapurna range in the rain shadow of the Himalayan rain shadow. So it gets less rain up there. It's very dry and barren. And where the rivers come through, there are patches of green where there's some agriculture. The people, though, also are just wonderful. They're friendly, welcoming, and a fascinating culture. So I highly recommend taking some time out. Even on our incredible Nepal tour, we actually fly up to Jonsom and spend a couple of nights in Kagbeni, which is the entrance to Upper Mustang. And although it's not part of the restricted area, they still have a very similar culture, and you get to experience it a little bit. So leaving behind Mustang now, I want to finish off with telling you about the food and culture and the customs in Nepal. So the food, these are a few of my favorite things to eat in Nepal. On the left are things called momos, and they're either fried or steamed. I like the steamed version. They can be vegetarian or they can be meat filled. And they're a delicious snack that you can get absolutely everywhere. Picture down the bottom is what's known as dal bhat. And when you come to Nepal, you'll become very familiar with dal bhat, which is kind of the Nepalese equivalent of an Indian thali. So you get a plate with various different dishes. You've got rice, dal, some different vegetables. And if you get a non-vegetarian dal bhat, then you'll also have a chicken or a meat curry. The image up there on the top is of something I love when I come to Nepal. It is yak cheese made from the milk of the female yak. A yak is a male. It's obviously the female cow, bovine, and it's a delicious cheese. It's sort of like a cross between a Parmesan and a Gruyere, and you'll often find it in dishes or served as a side dish. It's absolutely, if you like cheese, it is one of the best. Delicious. Lots of Western food available too in Nepal. as well as a vast array of different Nepalese dishes. And you will find that as you trek through Nepal or visit off the beaten places, even right up high in the mountains, people will be making pastries, apple pies, pizzas. This has stemmed really from the fact that Nepal has had such a long history of foreigners coming in and traveling, dating back to the climbers in the 50s, early climbers in the 50s and 60s, and then the hippies came, and the huge trekking market there now. They have so many hundreds of thousands of tourists every year, and they've managed to cater very, very well to the Western palate, and you can get some wonderful food. So when you've had your fill of dal bhat, of Nepalese food, and you are now craving a bit of a Western home style meal, then you'll have no problem finding that, especially in Kathmandu or Pokhara. Now, Nepal has a huge number of festivals. You might think it's a lot of Buddhists in Nepal. There are, but it's only about 10% of the population. 80% of Nepalese are actually Hindu. So like in India, all the big Hindu festivals are also celebrated in Nepal. You have two main ones are Dassain and Tihar, which are the equivalent of the Nepalese Dussehra and Diwali. Whereas in Nepal, Diwali is celebrated with fireworks and it's a very loud and a noisy festival. In Nepal, it's a very beautiful time to be there, and there's no fireworks, all about the lights. And it is called the Festival of Lights. One of the days of Tihar is actually a day to celebrate dogs. So the dogs get garlanded and tickered and worshipped on this one day of the year, which is really lovely. And there's lots of other very interesting, unique festivals to Nepal. One of them being this, which is called the Biscuit Jatra, which happens in Bhaktapur. And this chariot that you see on the left, you'll always see this chariot sitting beside the main temple in one of the squares of Bhaktapur. And during this festival, it's decorated and it's actually pulled around the streets with crowds, thousands of people looking on. Now, there's another very interesting custom, if you like, in Nepal, and that is of the Kumari princess. Kumari princess literally means the living goddess. It's a custom that dates back to the 10th century. And there are today 10 Kumaris in Nepal, 9 of whom are in the Kathmandu Valley, the most well-known being the Kumari princess of Kathmandu. She actually lives in the Durbar Square, and this building on the left image is inside the Kumari princess house. And you can go in and visit it. And in fact, every morning, the Kumari princess will come to a window in an upper balcony and show herself to the people who've come in to see her. Not allowed to take photographs, but it's quite a moving experience. Now, who is this Kumari princess? Well, she's chosen from a particular ethnic group of Nepalese, and from a young girl, maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. And once she reaches puberty, she returns to being a mere mortal. So it's a very interesting, in some ways, very difficult life for a Kumari princess, but it is a very fascinating custom. There's a very good book that I would recommend to read if you're interested in this, and it is called From Goddess to Mortal, written by a Kumari princess, the life that she lived in the palace and what her life was like when she stopped being a goddess. I'll leave the link in the YouTube description for you to look at. So lots of other festivals as well that I won't go into, but I just want to finish off by reiterating that the people of Nepal are just some of the most friendly, beautiful people you will ever meet. It is a land of smiles, and I can't say enough that it is just one of the most amazing countries to come and visit. There is so much more here than mountains, and trekking and adventure sports. It's a complete cultural travel destination with an incredible diversity of experiences on offer. Nepal is a year-round destination. The weather can be very changeable though, and variable, being up in the mountains, most of it. If you want clear, haze-free weather, then the autumn through early winter is the best. Avoid the monsoon, as there can be travel delays due to clouds, meaning that planes don't fly when there are clouds around because there's mountains in those clouds, and roads can get washed away quite easily. We have 2 itineraries in Nepal, as I've already mentioned. Incredible Nepal, and also Upper Mustang 4-wheel drive trip, which we run both of these trips in October, November. If you want more details, visit our website. All the links will be in the YouTube description. So please, if you have any questions, send me an email or a message on Facebook or Instagram, or leave a message here on YouTube as well. And I thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed traveling Nepal with us, and one day I hope to see you there in person. Until then, see you on our next presentation. Thank you very much.